breaking down the second they leave a shift, hardly able to function, never having a moment to take care of themselves because they give everything to these strangers every day. I've never thought about it quite like that before. It's an eye-opener. Jessie felt strangely exposed, wondering for the millionth time if he'd done the right thing in being so honest and raw. Well, thank you, he said quietly. I appreciate that. And you're funny as all get out, Doc. Lars burst into a fit of laughter and clapped his hands. What you've seen in those rooms and the conversations of patients coming out of surgery, priceless. He heaved out another laugh and smacked Jessie on the shoulder as he descended the steps. Have a good one, Jessie said, grinning back at Lars, who was still red-faced with laughter. He lifted his hand in a wave and closed the doors. No one ever got off on the same stop as Jessie, and he liked it that way. The neighborhood he lived in was full of remodeled classic mansions, although they could hardly be called mansions by the current standards. The street was wider than most in San Francisco, with mature trees shading it entirely, and stretched out lawns on each side. Plus, enough walking time between the bus stop and home for his brain to wind down, even at a quick pace. Jessie breathed deeply, his footsteps swift, thinking over a fellow surgeon's advice to take a break. In fact, he'd been in the midst of planning one, but for some reason the thought made him feel weak, as if he was running from something when really he should be able to handle it. A bit of fandom? It was nothing. He dealt with life-and-death procedures and high-risk patients. Surely he could manage this too. A young teenage boy burst from the shrubs, and Jessie jumped back to avoid a collision. The youth shoved something into his hands. Jessie caught the envelope before it could drop to the ground. What the? But the boy skittered away, disappearing behind a neighbor's house. And Jessie didn't follow. He only stared down at the envelope, reading his name on the front, in letters clearly not written by the messenger. Dr. Jessie LeVan. His stomach recoiled and he glanced around the neighborhood. Something inside him was warning, cautioning, until he shoved the envelope into his pocket and walked swiftly up the steps to the wide carpenter-style estate he called home. He entered warily, securing the lock and pacing through each room. But everything was in its place, clean and organized. Instead of taking pride in it, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. All it told him was that he was very alone. At least there were no fans here. He kept his address private, and so far no one had been dedicated enough to follow him home. At least not yet. With a sigh, he returned to the living room, amidst vaulted ceilings, old rustic beams, and windows that showed off an incredible view of the city, and sunk into the couch cushions. He slipped a finger under the seal and pulled out a single paper, gazing meticulously over the typed message. The hair on his neck bristled, and he sat up rigidly, flicking his gaze back to the beginning and reading it a second time. One line continued to stand out. There will be no further action against you if you state that your novel is a work of fiction, which it so obviously is. He was being threatened. His eyes narrowed at the last line, where he was warned against contacting police, and he pulled his cell phone from his pocket. Searching for the local police station, he typed in the numbers and waited as it rang. His heart was pounding at the thought of explaining the letter, but he swallowed back the nerves, refusing to be intimidated. The ringing stopped suddenly. The call dropped. Grumbling to himself, Jessie pressed the call button again. This time it only rang 3 times before suddenly cutting off again. He froze, staring at the screen of his phone as he fought with a growing suspicion. When a text appeared from an unknown number, there was no denying it. I said not to contact the police. His face felt cold. In the back of his mind, he could see himself in a bird's-eye view, standing in the middle of an empty room in an empty house. An easy target. He deleted the text with a swipe of his thumb and hurried to his room. Setting his personal cell phone on top of his dresser, he opened a small top drawer and sifted through a random assortment of gifts he'd received over countless speeches, dinners, and awards. Everything from $1,000 watches and diamond cufflinks to fountain pens. And then he spotted it. A gift he'd thought was either extremely inappropriate or just